An endless supply of imagination has once again crossed my desk here. Welcome back, everyone. Artist Journal, January 6, 2023, Berlin. My name is Adrian Pocobelli, and welcome back, everyone. And here we go. Twitter discovery. And by the way, thank you for all the retweets yesterday of the post and everything, actually, and the work that was purchased, which we'll look at in a second. But first, clearly here, I think the artist name is True Face, a new discovery here on Twitter. Clearly a reference to The Last Judgment by Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel. And of course, as far as I remember, and we can actually look this up before I start lecturing on things that I haven't researched, but from memory, The Last Judgment was painted many years later after the sealing. He was brought back, and it was kind of a darker work, clearly, The Last Judgment, you know, Jesus condemning people to hell and other people to heaven. And I think it was after the sack of Rome. Okay, so it's pretty amazing. Like, we've been talking about this idea of art, almost you'd never know, right? That the politics and the what's going on in the world, as I keep on saying, you know, what bear market? You know, in Renaissance painting, you could have probably said the same thing. And Alda just kind of, as we kind of increase and expand our conversation, never knowing where it will go on a daily basis here. Just kind of, again, we were talking about how in the 60s, would you have known in the rock and roll movement that JFK was assassinated between I Want to Hold Your Hand being released and Help? You know, like that sort of thing. Or the Rolling Stones. Like, would you have been able to tell? Maybe with Rubber Soul, you might have started to, you know, maybe that loss of innocence. And maybe in The Last Judgment, we do see a shift once we do know if I'm right. We'll take a quick look here. First, let's look at this, and then we'll look at the original really quickly, just so that we can compare and contrast. Really interesting kind of work here, though. I brought it up big, and actually this is their page of True Face, who, again, I'd never heard of before. And kind of an interesting method as well. Beautiful title, An Anthropology of Love. That is a great title. Method, AI, personal data set, and training model. So perhaps this person knows how to program AI. A lot of these AI programmers are doing art because they're kind of like, they probably could read the tea leaves 10 years ago, 5 years ago, that this was going to become a thing. And that this produces images. Continuing on, digital post-production, poem made by AI text generator. So here's the poem. Again, True Face, probably a AI-generated name. Anthropology of Love is probably a AI-generated title, I am guessing. And kind of interesting to look up close. I mean, it's a little fuzzy, a touch fuzzy. I think the concept is retained. But almost what I want to get at here is kind of looks kind of plant-like. Like there's almost like a garden. These bodies have been turned into a garden, but it's not high resolution enough to kind of see like that this would be a red leaf or whatever. So, which is kind of interesting in itself. Like, I don't say when it's fuzzy that that's necessarily, in our very open-minded world, where pixel art can be, blurred, which we're going to see again in this episode. We don't assume that just because things are, JPEG distorted or artifacts, as people, if there's JPEG artifacts, that these are necessarily bad things or not on purpose. But lest we get distracted here. So anyways, just kind of an interesting image, and so I wanted to look at it. And of course, from a distance, we all recognize that. Right? And here are other works which seem to be riffing off of art history, at least these last few, or at least kind of religious imagery. This almost looks Eastern. Interesting titles, Totem and Taboo, of course, referencing the Freud book. So anyways, interesting artist, True Face, interesting AI. And let's very quickly, Sistine Chapel, Last Judgment. Let's see if they give us a quick history, since I'm lecturing on things I haven't researched again. Let's just see. It is, okay, Wikipedia. So here is, okay, so we can even do the comparison here. Quite different, but quite similar. And you know what's funny? I didn't recognize that this was part of the architecture. I thought this was new. So it's interesting how the architecture fits in to that AI work. But anyways, yeah, so here, yeah. So kind of seen as a darker work. And let's just actually go back. So anyways, here, and it's anybody who hasn't been to Rome yet, you must go to Rome and you must go to this room. If you are an art aficionado, you have to go to this room. And maybe that's where I remember. I was probably, and there's a ton of tour guides. And of course, this is supposed to be, finally, if I can find it again, a self-portrait of Michelangelo. Again, the darkness, right? So again, this idea between current events and how it kind of bleeds into the art, but if you don't know the current event, it might not be obvious, right? So yeah, let's see if we can just quickly find, I'm trying to keep these down to 25 minutes. I'm gonna end up 25 minutes on the first image. Let's just see, fresco by Michelangelo covering the whole altar wall of the Sistine Chapel in Vatican City, a depiction of the Second Coming and the final and eternal judgment by God of all humanity. Okay, the work took 4 years to complete between 1536 and 1541. So 4 years. Preparation of the altar wall began in 1535. Michelangelo began working on it 25 years after having finished the Sistine Chapel. 25 years. So you just think of the difference in mindset, right? And again, we think of that supposed self-portrait that we're just looking at. And he was nearly 67 at its completion. So he started this, my friends, never lose hope. He started this when he was 63 or 62, let's say. He had originally accepted the commission from Pope Clement VII, but it was completed under Pope Paul III, whose stronger reforming views probably affected the final treatment, right? And there's apparently in the original, Christ was naked, and they painted on the, would you call that a sash or whatever that is, the cloth afterwards. It got much praise and criticism. Description. I just want to see, as far as the sacking of Rome, if that's no, sacred. Okay, anyways, I'm getting off. Let me just look up the year. So this is 1536 to 1541. Let's just look up quickly the sack of Rome, 1527. Okay, you see that, 1527? And it was painted, so in between, Rome was sacked. Okay? So, yeah, so anyways, we're getting off topic here, but in between, so it's a different, darker time in the Renaissance. Continuing on, True Face, cool work. So anyways, thank you. I released a sketch yesterday. I'm trying to just release more work. I'm going to try and release another one today. And thank you to all these collectors here who bought and even sold on secondary. So that was awesome. Thank you very much. That warms my heart very much. So that was great. 808 sketch and a reference, of course, to the TR-808 drum machine. Yeah, so I'm probably going to put out another sketch today. It's already done, but I'm still, looking it over. So anyways, thank you, everyone. And quick comment here that I want to highlight. I'm really into this ongoing discussion of defining pixel art. The genres are being defined and defended and challenged over here. Love it. So that's a comment from RuneTune. because Ed Marola, I guess, again, chimed in yesterday with a definition of pixel art. So we're loving that. So anyways, and thank you again for these very nice comments here. So this is interesting. So remember we were talking yesterday about how Charles AI made a fortune yesterday, but this was on his open edition, like 48 grand. This is interesting. Almost 1.5 ETH in secondary sales, but I just realized I'm not getting royalties for every sale, only for about 30% of them. So this is an interesting issue because, wasn't it done on Manifold, your contract before the day, et cetera, et cetera. I noticed on OpenSea the royalties were shown as optional. I don't know why, but that's what is shown when you sell the piece. So that explains it. So it looks to me like Charles AI did not set the royalties, and I'm going to show you. So you need to do a setting here. The marketplace blocker. Manifold has this marketplace blocker feature if you need to block marketplaces that don't pay you the royalties. So it looks to me, so I went into Manifold and I went to one of my contracts here for the composites, which I did mint on a separate contract, which I'm loving. Again, these combine, 3 or 4 images that you find in Google Images and then combine it into one. So I was just to mint that contract. So getting into it though, on-chain royalties. So I put 10%, but you see here, OpenSea royalties. OpenSea will respect. So I think this needs to be enabled. And someone was calling it Corey, and that is the Creator Ownership Research Institute. So not to get too far in the weeds, and that includes Super Rare and OpenSea, but I think Charles AI needs to enable operator filter. If I'm not mistaken, I am definitely not an expert, but I think that's what's going on here because I thought I'd be good. I did my contract here, but it is not enabled. So I think you need to enable that. Speaking of making a ton of coin and just doing overall fabulous, I don't know if you were watching this. I was watching this. I mean, it was something to behold. So Uxine scrolled to death. It was taking offers. He was taking offers till 6 p.m. His time. And wait till you see how much these went for. Basically, the accepted offers for this edition of 10, okay, an edition of 10, 569 was the lowest, and 666 was the highest. So basically, you weren't getting this work for less than 569 Tezos for this edition of 10. So Uxine rakes in, 5,500 Tezos, basically $5,000. He was probably like 5,800 Tezos or something. Whatever it was, that is something else. So anyways, big congrats to Uxine. And you know what it made me think of? Well, actually, I'll get to that in a second. Just looking at the secondary here, and hopefully this doesn't, okay, 23, 60, 30, 42, 235, and this is what I wanted to show you though. This, 1,690, 444, but this is an edition of 10 that went for 1,690 Tezos yesterday. So 500, 300, this is all in the last 8 hours, okay? So 620, edition of 13. So all pretty interesting, old and new. And again, this is the last 15, 16 hours. So pretty amazing. This is the work that went for how much did it go for? 4,569 Tezos last night. This is an edition of 1. So he sold one last night, or the night before for, I think, 5,000, and then did another one for these one-of-ones on Tezos. And these are older. These are from July. So, when you go to Uxine's page, I put offer high to low, and you see here, offers 575 and no takers. Okay. offer 500, 480, 475, 469. Like, people aren't taking so far as the most recent of this page. So anyways, I dug up this tweet from RobnessV2 that I remember from August. The big throwdowns on Tezos art prices really hasn't happened yet, but it will. Just takes a couple of stone-cold gambler whales to make the leap and take one for the team on pieces they really love to acquire. That's how it was done in Ethereum. Same applies to Tezos. August 8th, 2022. So 6 months ago. So my question is, are we seeing the big throwdown? Like, is this what we're starting to see? Mech.txt making some nice sales too. Secondary report, 7 massive scoops on secondary. So again, for his pixel art, 50 Tezos, 35, 35, 25. And when you go to his page, it's starting to get pretty sparse there too. So, and here are more. You see, like, so again, if you're kind of tapping that nerve that the market wants, it's boom times here, as I was saying yesterday. Quick update on Santiago's work here. This went for 0.693 ETH. So the first one went for 0.3. This one went for pretty much 0.7. So cool update there. So congrats to Santiago. Nice kind of trajectory there. It's great to make sales like that. And speaking again, like, I mean, more boom times here. Acid Boy with 44 minted at 0.08. I did the math here for us. Let me just dig it up. here. 3.5 ETH, 3.52 ETH. So a cool, let's times 1,200, $4,224 on Acid Boy's Open Edition. So, and still open. So $4,200 US, not bad. He also put this out, which is interesting. Vortex is a series of 50 unique NFTs with rarities. So it's kind of reminiscent of PFP projects, isn't it? And it's kind of where generative art, I mean, because they're kind of made the same way, generative art and PFPs. They are layers in Photoshop. Correct me if I'm wrong. That's what I've deduced, is they are layers in Photoshop, and basically you switch on and off the layers and you create, and you feed it into the machine, into the script, and then it gives you your results. So you're kind of seeing generative art, but so normally you'd say, oh, well, this is generative art. But I think the way it's being sold is more reminiscent of a PFP project to me, a profile picture project. So isn't that interesting? So here they are. And even just the way that they're kind of, again, with this, default image here, where it gets you excited, which one am I going to get, the rarity, right? And that exists with generative, but again, this feels more like a PFP. And I kind of like that. Even just the floors at 0.4 ETH, again, it's got a PFP sort of feel to it. And here's more. Acid Boy, some stats for the Vortex drop, background type. Again, this feels like, and these same sort of details and traits are found on, if you go to FX hash, but there's just something about it that feels more PFP-ish, which I think is kind of fun, actually, because why not? Why should there be some border? And there's another one here by Moonchild. Again, it feels like a PFP project over here. The floor is 0.1, just the preview piece. The fact that it's on Ethereum, say rather than Tezos, if this was an FX hash drop, I would say, oh, this is generative art. But I'm not sure if you can have this like moving preview image. And it's kind of like from a purely pragmatic point of view, if you're going to do a work like this, and again, this looks like there's a character here, I'm not sure. It's tempting to do it on Ethereum because maybe you'll make more money just from a purely pragmatic point of view. I'm not sure. So that's going to be interesting. I'm going to try and remember to follow up on this because I want to see what these look like and I want to see what kind of happens. Rare. who watches this program and retweets it sometimes. Much appreciated, Rare. He has a really cool work that he's been working on, Lamb of Boston Dynamics. And actually, I don't know if this is like a placeholder. Like, did he actually print this out and put it in a museum or in a gallery wall? Or I'm not sure. It looks awesome, though, for a digital painting there. He put some really interesting details in it. The Lamb of Boston Dynamics, who takes the sin away from AI, a new painting finished last night. So anyways, here's a big version of it. And he actually goes into a pretty interesting write-up. It's based, and we'll get back to the painting in a second, based on Francisco de Zubarran's paintings of the Lamb of God, Agnus Dei in Latin. Luckily, I've seen the two most famous in person in Madrid at the Prado and at the San Diego Art Museum. So these are different versions, okay? Kind of back to that idea of related images, or which is, what you're going to get in Google search results. Like, so for me, I love this kind of stuff because it's even more confusing. Because if you did a search on this painting in Google Images, you might think they're the same painting, but different photographers. But actually, in this case, they're actually two different versions by the same artist of the same painting. So anyways, so here are the references. And I'm not going to read everything, but I'm going to read some of it. And I thought this was interesting. And initially, I was put off with the very organic bend that the lamb had to be in, right? Because he's doing a robotic dog. Easy for a living creature, difficult for something with a hard plastic and metal body, but found it kind of reminiscent of Surrealist Dali painting. Of course, the melting watches from the persistence of memory here. So he kind of worked with it a little bit. So interesting. And as he discusses here, another fun detail, how the lamb's spot were tied up, a delicate lace to restrain the sacrifice. This was a very nice detail and beautifully painted here, I might add. So really doing some nice, just kind of digital, traditional, quote unquote, painting, very untraditional tools. And my favorite detail, especially in all those religious era paintings, the halo. In case you didn't know, this was innocent and holy, just like Spot. So there is Rare's halo. So it's interesting to compare as well. Okay, and finally, so he has a bit more here. I'm not going to go into all of it, but I thought I'd just do the comparison. So this is going to be released on Super Rare today, I believe. So anyways, cool, interesting work and cool work from Rare. Interesting write-up too. I think that's really smart to actually do these kind of write-ups. People love it. Gets collectors interested. Win-win. Speaking of the Christ theme in our show today, I guess there's a bit of a Christian or Christ theme, which is obviously huge in art history. And we have a hilarious kind of satirical take from Tezos Rodin's from one of my favorite series that he does, The Failed Artist, part 12. So kind of hilarious here. The failed artist with fries on his head and crucified with cigarettes. So, and again, painted with kind of an oil paint texture there. Really nicely done, and our Pepe figure there. So are you happy now? Very substantial future returns promised. So done in Microsoft Paint digital painting. And here was another one that I missed. This came out December 8th. So while I was away in Canada there, what a beautiful one this was too. I find it a, very powerful series, and because it's like a lot of people face that. I hang out with a lot of people here in Berlin and everybody's just struggling to do their thing, So it's not easy being an artist. So I really like this series. And here the artist as a jester. And again, smoking, I love the cigarette smoke that turns into rainbow colors here. And the depressed artist. And, at least he's not on the street anymore. And some cigarette butts, hot dog half eaten, and more. So anyways, cool color too. Buy for $9.90 from the dime store Pepe's. Self-portrait jester. So really cool series. A new one from Board Me Social Club. This just came out, Farewell. And this was interesting, going of our sort of contemporary art theme, derivative of Wolfgang Wolfgang Tillmans' piece, Suzanne and Lutz, 1993. So we'll take a look at that here. Here's the work, first of all, by Board Me Social Club. Interesting, right? This strange setting, half indoors, half outdoors. And here is the reference. So this is Wolfgang Tillmans, taken from, I think it's at the MoMA here, Museum of Modern Art. So again, Suzanne and Lutz by Wolfgang Tillmans. And here we go. So we see a pretty clear, relationship here, including the hands and everything. So I'm not sure what Wolfgang Tillmans was up to here, but anyways, an interesting rendition. And he uses a little bit this corner, I think, as architectural, but kind of shifts it, makes it half indoors, half outdoors. Anyways, interesting interpretation and heavy on interpretation. Farewell by Board Me Social Club. 200 are going to be minted, so we'll see what he mints that for. Human Kernel. As we kind of go into our more sophisticated pixel art here, again, courtesy of Hasdrubal Waffle. And Santiago had a nice tweet. I was actually going to bring it up, where he gave a compliment to the show about how, that we correctly identified, I think is how he put it, Hasdrubal Waffle as very sophisticated, art, but that is not obvious from a first pass, that sort of thing. So shout out to Santiago for that nice comment. Human Kernel here. So again, this kind of experimental, edgy kind of, digital art, because it's not purely pixel art, however we want to define it, because we have some digital painting here. And again, this is taken from Human Kernel's anti-PFP project, and I did bring it up here. So we looked at this piece, and I think we looked at this piece here too. So each one seems to be kind of different, right? And again, PFPs are another kind of recurring theme here. And so interesting, right? This seems to be a tribute to Ed Merola here, Purple Dreamer. And anyway, and is that Hasdrubal? There's Hasdrubal. That one you can still get. So anyways, pretty cool. I'll have to peruse this page a little bit. Interesting artist, Human Kernel, anti-PFP project on the Tezos blockchain. And speaking of Ed Merola, so this is, again, our aesthetics, our sense of aesthetics is being challenged by these artists, okay? You see the fuzziness here, the blurring out of pixels. Like, this is challenging our sense of aesthetics. But if you've seen over and over pixel art, it starts to become pretty interesting, doesn't it? Right? These people are pushing the envelope. So, and they seem to know each other too a little bit, or kind of responding to each other, doing portraits of each other. So, Ratinho tego dego, la tendance c'est la évolution. So, I would guess that means the trend is the evolution. Purple ratinity in service of love. So, anyways, interesting piece. Was it sent to someone? Yes. A new discovery here. Philippe to a collector. So, and again, the greatness of this kind of digital, one of the great things about this digital art scene is now we can go through Felipe Ruggeri's collection and see what treasures we find there. Small collection though, only one page here. But he's got a Ed Merola 1 of 1 now, so congrats to that. Sabato with a pretty cool Chrome period piece. Poteau, Pote 8OS, throughbred racehorse who won a notable string of victories in late 18th century England. So here it is. So again, I just love this series, and I think you can get it for $8.88, 8 Tezos, 88 Tezos cents. So really interesting work, kind of reminiscent for me of those, what is the name of the photographer who did the horses in motion? Etienne Jules Marais. Is that it? Shall we look quickly? I mean, that is not what Sabato is referencing, but I love those works. Etienne Jules Marais. And let's try horses. Otherwise, it's the other guy. Yeah, kind of reminiscent for me of these works, but that's just me. And yeah, I love this these works, these abstractions. I actually have some works that work with this. Yeah, and let's not get too lost in the weeds here. This is a pretty low-res version, but you get the point. I think it's just uber stylish from a certain perspective, for black and white work especially. Anyways, Poteau, beautiful horsework. And this is Popple, with a kind of experimental work for him. The Lady of Hearts, a wicked queen. She moves through the shadows with a sly grin. Available for 14 Tezos on secondary. Let's just take a look here. And what was sold for 8 on primary. So interesting work, right? Not sure what's going on here. So, and you see the heart moving. So kind of a haunting work. Sanitarium. Is this a new series? It is. So again, kind of monochromatic too, referencing, I guess, the heart. So kind of a mysterious drop from Popple, a collection of pagan poetry, lost tales, and nighttime lullabies about the sanitarium and its dwellers, hand-drawn pixel illustration animation by Popple. Interesting. This was retweeted by Sabato, actually, of a Cap'n work, Wilderness. And again, I'm always back to this idea of nature and pixel art go beautifully together. The rectilinear, hard-edged pixels with curvilinear organic forms is a epic contrast. It's just an epic contrast, and you see it in action here. Nature work with pixels. I did it with my own 8-bit nature series as well. There's something about it that just works. Wilderness. I don't think this has been minted yet. I was on Cap'n's page. I didn't see it. Another experimental work by Ed Marola, Condominium. So, and I think we can zoom in here. So really, again, this is, I think, GLB is what they call this tech, kind of 3D pixel art. So again, pushing the boundaries here, right? Like, I mean, what I like about these guys, there's even some fuzziness and some, blurring out here. So these guys are really pushing the edge of pixel art, quote unquote pixel art. It almost doesn't feel right to call it pixel art, but it is. I mean, this is, and look at the back. And so again, this experimentation, you see the edges here. It's just very interesting. This is going somewhere, okay? Islay with some nice ASCII work here. Unicode, Japanese tree, Pini. You guys know how to pronounce that. I don't. Glitch 2, white background, Unicode art generator times Canek Zapata. So I guess they put some Canek Zapata into a Unicode art generator. I'm not exactly sure, but a pretty interesting result if you ask me. And Islay is happy with the result, yeah, and I think it very nice, okay? Like, it looks really interesting, okay? She did another one, MoMA, and exploration of generated image. And so you see, playing with different characters here too. So pretty interesting. And like, I love to sample. Why I love the Magic Wand is because it's to me, it's a mega sampling tool. And I would be tempted to, okay, and maybe I shouldn't reveal, but we're in a sharing mode here. I would love, and maybe nobody cares I would love to start sampling these on a separate layer, right? And then you sample the MoMA, and all of a sudden, then you get rid of everything else. And then it's like, well, it's kind of back to this idea we were seeing with the Uxine sampling the zine, right? And for that beam that came from the skull. And what I liked about that a lot was this idea of disguising where it came from. Like, it wasn't obvious to me. I thought, well, maybe it was a digital thing that he applied some process, or who knows what he did to get those distortions. And again, so it's fun to disguise where things are coming from, right? Because then as a consumer of art, you go, well, how was that made? How did that come from? So anyways, very interesting. I mean, the MoMA looks beautiful when you separate it. So this is kind of interesting and fun, as always, from Kurt Hustle Collective. So they have the Proto-Pioneers, right? So the Puppet Pioneers. And this is what I really liked about it. 1920 by 1080 official wallpaper. So some phone wallpaper here for you, courtesy of the Puppet Pioneer TV shows. the first blockchain TV show. And this is also out of the television studio here. Desert Rider Danny. I don't think we looked at him yesterday. Did we look at him already? I love these guys so much that I might be showing them twice. But anyways, looks like another classic character here. I think this one's new. I picked that up. This was nice too. Puppet Pioneers 8-Bit and Kurt Hustle Collective, maybe because I picked up another one that was sent for free. So anyways, really nice kind of 8-bit version of the Puppet Pioneers title window, or whatever you'd call that. Continuing on, LB, Human After All. So again, using a Adderall V4, Panasonic WJ-MX30, rescan from a CRT monitor. So it's kind of funny. When I see rescan by a CRT monitor, it's almost like, I don't know if you've ever tried this, but I remember back in the day, I would sometimes try and take a picture of a low-res image with a high-res camera in order to try and blow it up, like for example. And of course it didn't work, but what you got were these interesting distortions. Again, traveling through the mediums. And for me, I want to get rid of the distortions. But here, it seems to me, again, rescanned from CRT monitor, that people are using these kind of distortions. It's not a bug, it's a feature, right? So here's a nice big version of this skull, Human After All, by LB. And continuing on, Datura. So with the 1 of 1, okay, and this is at auction here. And Datura is a recent discovery, again, back into this edgy pixel art that we're looking at here, experimental pixel art, which again, where is this happening? Like, I'm sure there is some experimental pixel art in museums out there, but I think this is probably competing with it. All of these, like what these guys are doing, like we're seeing interesting things happen. Here's an interesting work by Françoise Gamma, which kind of looks like a Picasso-esque drawing of a certain kind, pixelated and then kind of 3D rotated, right? And what's interesting is you see how it looks like it's from the front and then to the side and then as if you're going to see behind, but then it turns to the front again. So kind of a weird illusion there. It always kind of turns to the front. At least that's what my eyes do. Buy for 2. Sad Girl, Defaced. So again, playing with this kind of anime, kind of processed anime shots and messing around with the colors and everything there. Interesting artist. Buy for $27.27. So big audience for this Sad Girl. You see offers coming in, a lot of collectors, and accepted 25 to 7. So again, like I think business is booming out here. It's just, like if you're making work that people want to buy and you're getting yourself out there, you're probably going to have a pretty good shot at just kind of creating something for yourself. Dan Control's another one, another guy who's doing that. And look at this iPhone work. And I have the Nokia one. I kind of wanted the big handheld one. And I imagine this in the, gallery in my mind that you put all 3 phones together. And of course, he did Generations. That was on Foundation. So I think that was on Ethereum, where he put all 3 generations into one. So anyways, interesting work. I picked one up. And here is another Ethereum work from Dan Control. And look, current bid from Scomra of 0.15 ETH. So keeping it reasonable, cheap prices, 1 of 1, making a good business. I mean, you're selling art. These guys are selling art on a daily basis. Here it's on Ethereum, there it's on Object, on multi-chain, right? Because if he releases this on Object at the same time, it's almost like too much. But this is another advantage of using multi-chain. You can release more work, say more than one work in one day or whatever. Like you're not going to oversaturate your market if you're releasing 2 different chains. They're different products. And I use the term product endearingly. Some people don't like that word. For me, it's a product. You put it on the wall, and as much reverence as I have, and maybe that might mean different things to different people, but ultimately, I think I'm kind of a demystifier of the artist to a certain degree. That's kind of like my angle. I think that's why I think anybody can be an artist. I think artists, have been over mystified a little bit since Romanticism, and arguably even since the Renaissance. This idea of the artist genius, and I think there is an element of being an outsider. But it's not a black or white issue, because some people just want to say, oh, they have reservations calling themselves artists. And I think you should never have a reservation calling yourself an artist. I think everybody should have an artistic outlet. And not having anything, to me, would be the weirder thing. Of course, it's probably 80% of the population, but I think people should have creative outlets, whatever it is, even if it's dancing. Shout out to Mom, who does flamenco dancing. All right, this is a beautiful work, by the way, lest we forget to discuss the work. So anyways, auction just started. You gotta love it. I'm taking notes here. Do these cheap auctions and they're not even that cheap. I mean, that's $200. I mean, the contemporary art world, that's not a bad sale. And here you have zero costs. Okay? So don't shy away from the small sales. And I say it as much to me as to you. I'm telling myself that. The paper crane, this isn't so small though. Look at this, 195 Tezos. But isn't this interesting? Just to show the psychological aspect, I think 195 Tezos for this edition of 15, that's a lot of money. Or those Uxines that are going for 500 Tezos, that's a lot of money. But I think what's going on, the reason you're getting 1,500 Tezos sales is, my theory on that is ETH collectors are coming over and they're going, this art is cheap and it's good. And that's why all of a sudden Uxine is selling for 5,000 Tezos, which sounds like a lot. But in super rare ETH terms, it's like, what is that? Like 3 ETH, right? Which is a lot of money, but it's not really, it turns your head a little bit on Ethereum, but not huge amounts. It's not shocking, but here it's like, oh my God, same thing here. I mean, how much is 0.15 ETH? And again, I'm trying to keep these short, but 0.15 times 1,200, the cost of an ETH. So this is about $180, right? And I was saying, it's good to be cheap. And then I go here and I say, wow, that's expensive. But really, this is cheaper. 195 times 0.76, that's 140. This is $150. So this work is cheaper than this work, but you see 0.15 and you think, oh, that's selling for nothing. And you see this and you go, oh, wow, that's selling for a lot of money. That's 200 Tezos. So isn't that interesting? And part of it is because Tezos has gone down a lot more than Ethereum. Okay, so this is something to keep in mind. And again, the importance of diversifying across chains. It's all to your benefit. There are different collectors, different communities. There is some overlap, but not entirely. Daniel W. with a really nice tarot work here. He started a new series, I think. So his interpretation of the Chariot and this is the famous tarot card. Let's see if we can find out actually a famous tarot deck. It's the most famous one. He seems to be referencing it in this one here, the Rider Tarot deck. And actually, should we just look at the Chariot? Okay, Rider Tarot Chariot. Wow, totally different. I mean, so that's really cool. You see the cube, though. You see the cube, but he turns it into the head. So, quite a interpretation here. Like, that's what I really like about Daniel W.'s work is he does a lot of interpreting here. So pretty interesting. This star in the middle here, let's just see if there's also, no, the cube is there and the star is there. So he reverses the star in the cube. Pretty interesting. He has another one, the Hermit. Let's just quickly take a look at the Hermit. So we actually learned something here today. The Hermit, so of course, most of us will recognize this. So let's look at Daniel W.'s version. Quite an interpretation. I mean, this guy is facing us. And here, it's almost like a Grim Reaper. Whereas here, it's not. So that's really cool. This is beautiful too, isn't it? And a star, and instead of, the obvious thing would be to do a star, but he puts a lit lantern. So very nice work from Daniel W. A homage to my year in self-imposed isolation. Dexter, as we work our way through here with a new work, a new painting. Again, edgy, edgy. This is, like I think we're seeing, again, when I see a work like this, we're seeing the maturation of digital art. Again, this is not typical, digital art with this barely fuzzy sun. And then, there's a city, like the whole thing, again, just has a kind of sophistication that I don't think we necessarily saw 10 years ago in digital art. I think that's a fair statement. 3000 by 1500 pixels, Romanticana by Dexter, and this just came out. This is interesting too. Ramenya, August Waves. So again, kind of a landscape work, kind of sci-fi-ish here. There is some music. Let me just turn it on. Seems to be a Japanese, this looks like a Japanese writing here. And even in the title there, was it Ramana? Kind of soothing, interesting work, right? Kind of a beachfront, and went for 1.4 ETH, okay? So again, I make a big deal about 1.4 ETH, and then I go, like it's a nice price, but then we look at Uxine and we're shocked, but it's like these numbers aren't that far from what Uxine's going for. So just all kind of interesting, this assessing the valuation, how we're valuing things on different chains. There is like a difference, isn't there? At least for me. Sky Goodman with a really nice shoe, part of his shoe series of impossible shoes, which I love that idea. And I think he's kind of known for these, the Lost Sneakers, Molten Lava's Highs, just some AI kicks pixel sorted. So he is playing with AI. And so anyways, and some of his kind of what I call digitalia in effect here, digital effects. And again, on Object, edition of 10. Interesting painting by Bolin. So this is kind of digital collage and digital painting, okay? So interesting, just kind of, taking collage and then kind of what looks to me like painting over it. It's got a bit of an AI feeling to it, but I don't know if it's AI. That's why I put it right before the AI section here. And I think one of the most interesting original parts is actually this part here. And it kind of feels physical when you look at these kind of edges coming out here. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's just this is being moved off the canvas a little bit, and who knows? But all to say, again, more novel kind of ideas in imagery experimentation here. And then Ilya Shipkin, who uses AI and digital painting traditionally. Now, this is like a sculpture. So AI sculpture. So I assume this is an AI, a digital file, not a physical sculpture that Ilya Shipkin has taken a picture of. So interesting, right? So there's another one here, Amalgamation 1, and here's Amalgamation 2, again, sculpture and AI. Remember we were seeing, was it neo-sculpture, what they were talking about yesterday, which also seemed to be combining sculpture and AI? So are we seeing a trend here with sculpture and AI in kind of these two-dimensional works? Interesting question. It appears that maybe we're seeing the first gleams of that. Someone called June, Xenocat_art, self-portrait, Genesis work for Selfie Mania, collect on Foundation, 0.05 ETH. So a nice work. Kind of has a 16th century feel to it, but very sci-fi. Selfie. So another AI artist to pay attention to, June. Nice color too, by the way. A nice piece, kind of feels like a robot here. There's a lot going on. And so continuing on, Kika Nikolela, and this is kind of the future of our garments, kind of a fashion in AI. And of course we remember Strange Thing in that domain. So again, stuff we'd never come up with on AI. And I was kind of thinking about this idea, like, what do I mean by irrational choices that are made by the AI? Or it's like the AI, like when we get like four hands, one person with four hands, like we were seeing yesterday with Lily Ilo. And that is the machine. It's going rationally, but we interpret it as a mistake. Because it's taking all these references, putting them together, and all of a sudden the one woman has four hands. And that is we interpret that as as irrational, but really it's kind of a mistake. But from our human perspective, as far as the machine is concerned, it's combining images and there's no mistake at all. So it's our interpretation where I go, oh, that's irrational. But in fact, from the machine's perspective, it can't be irrational. It's acting super rational, like to AI degree. It's combining everything and all its references, putting it together and then smoothing it out, removing the noise, as the AI people would put it. So anyways, interesting work here. Before I wax on for too long here, very interesting novel imagery. And EdgeQ, who you might remember, I brought up his page here from the trading cards. He is experimenting with AI, and he even started in some of these works, I believe. Say, like, I picked up this one, the Keith Haring reference, which I thought was beautiful. I believe he used AI in basketball and whatever. So anyways, he continues to experiment with AI, and here's the work. AI, hip-hop, and alternative history, heavy as the head that wears the crown. 99 problems, but the beat ain't one. So anyways, interesting work here. Look at that typewriter of sorts. It looks like steampunk. It looks like a steampunk typewriter, doesn't it? And finally, we have a couple more here. Blank Embrace. So I'd never seen them before. Elixir. Just an interesting, I think this is AI. I'm not positive. Let's just see if they have anything. Visual Artist AI Explorer. So probably AI. Interesting. You just get the sense that this is an AI work. And a surprise drop from Mr. Shapeless. Well, it's interesting, his skies, his shapes in the skies sort of motif. And here, it was dropped on object again. So how cool is that? For a Tezos. So having a lot of fun there, and people just buying furiously to make some money. Now you got to pay $38.67, and let's just see, someone made a 20x there. Accept offer, and nice piece from Mr. Shapeless. Again, why wouldn't Mr. Shapeless also release on object? That's money too. Those are collectors too. That's raising Mr. Shapeless's profile too. That's a place to put Mr. Shapeless's art, right? So the benefits of multi-chain are just emphasized over and over and over again. Morning at Blue Ridge by Mr. Shapeless as well. So a beautiful landscape here as well. And our Wanderer figure, of course, at the front there. So anyways, just very beautiful. And also an AI work by Sum. This is just a crowded room. I like the change in perspective here. I thought it was a very nice work. Buy for $3. Again, a different perspective, literally, on the artist studio here, this time from above. A crowded room, new generation art studios. So very cool work there. And that, my friends, is your show. Thanks again for joining me. And until next time, take care.